all about it. So with a bit of fear and trepidation, my colleague Jim made his way up the slope through all the picnickers and so forth, and had the opportunity to stand amongst 5 or 6 men in their early 20s and share the gospel with them. And they stood listening for 10 or 15 minutes very seriously, and then he was able to offer them gospel literature at the end. So that was very, very encouraging.
Now, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, many years ago, we would see Christians at Hyde Park standing on their soapboxes talking about the gospel, and, you know, it wasn't uncommon to see preaching in the streets. Something that we don't see a great deal of now. Most of the preaching's done in the churches. Do you still feel there's a role for street evangelism?
For as long as there are people outside the churches not hearing that good preaching that may be going on within, I think we have the Great Commission, haven't we? That there's still, as someone said, the standing orders of the church today to go into all the world and preach the gospel. And it's exactly what the Lord Jesus did. It's exactly what the apostles did. And we believe, you know, that the biblical mandate is there to preach. And I suppose we ask ourselves, why is it that sometimes Christians and churches shy away from this approach of evangelism? And it may be that sometimes it has been done badly. I suppose it perhaps attracts the type of person that maybe isn't allowed to preach in the pulpit. He wants to express himself, and he'll go and stand on a street corner, and maybe that's done in perhaps an aggressive way or a very loud way. I mean, one of the things we shy away from quite deliberately is the use of amplification, because that can portray the preacher as very aggressive, and he's sort of imposing his message upon the crowd, whereas we just rely on the strength of our own voice. And so if people don't want to listen and they're walking down a high street, within a few seconds they'll be out of earshot of what's being said, and so they're free to stop and listen. And we try very hard really to train our men so that we're preaching the truth in love. That's always got to be so important. The gospel truth is paramount, but how we present that has an effect as well, doesn't it? And
yes, that was my next question. I mean, you don't just go out and stand on soapboxes, do you? I mean, it's very organised what you do, and it's very well planned.
Yes,
give some examples of how you plan and what you actually do.
Well, we have a display board which we use to help us in our preaching, to put the sort of bare bones of a message on, and that can be helpful to a passing crowd. They can pick up what's being said. It would be a magnetic board, so we're putting laminated material on there, and we've got a literature display lower down offering free literature, little leaflets and more in-depth booklets and Gospels of John as well that we offer to people at the end of our messages. And we'd encourage local churches to get involved, and for teams to come out. It's not just about the preaching, it's about those in the team being ready on the fringes of a meeting to engage people in personal conversation. And our desire is to draw people to us, and again that's a reason for not being really loud. So people will hopefully come and listen, and then as they make their way away from a meeting, we would engage them personally and just ask, thanks for listening to my friend there, do you mind asking what you thought of that? And conversations begin about spiritual things. And I know as Christians sometimes we battle with this, how do I turn the conversation round to the Lord? Well, if someone's been standing listening to the preaching in the street, you don't have to worry about that, do you? Because you're just in with a conversation, and invaluable work is often done on those one-to-one encounters. And our desire is simply to engage with people, to talk to people about the Lord publicly and individually. We can find out where they are. We always try and have lots of good literature with us, so we can hand it according to their question, their problem, their trouble, and point them to the Saviour. That's ultimately what we want to do, and see people saved.
So there you are, you're out on the high streets, in the market centres, the town centres. What is the response?
Well, it's probably the same as it's always been. I think that there's always been some who have been totally apathetic, and that's probably the largest response that we receive today. There's a lot of apathy. People are so taken up with materialism, with the here and now, as though there's nothing in the afterlife, and that really is, I think, like a dark cloud almost on Britain today, so much apathy. But in amongst that, there are those who are genuinely interested. Sometimes that interest expresses itself in a rather aggressive way. Sometimes people are hurting, aren't they? And so they come angrily and they heckle and they throw out their question. And if we can seek to in a winsome way, engage with them, often we can get past that shell and really speak to them where they're at. And
I think that's a really good point that you raise, because people are looking for answers, they are searching, and you're quite right, many people are hurting, aren't they, and so they'll see Christians and they may sort of take out that hurt on them in terms of how they ask the questions, how they frame the questions. And I think we need to be sensitive about how we respond to that. So are you able to work collaboratively with local churches, or do you just go out and do your own thing?
No, we believe it's very important to work alongside the church and not just do our own thing. One of the main reasons for that is for the purpose of follow-up. When people inquire and show a real interest, we don't want to just leave them in limbo land. We want them to go to a good church where they can hear the gospel, they can meet with Christians, they can perhaps go on a Christianity Explored course or something like that, find out more, and God willing, be saved. And that's wonderful when we hear of that happening.
Okay, so if anybody showed an interest and wanted to sort of follow up, you would actually direct them to the local churches.
That's right. And usually when our men are in their local towns, or we're having a special week of mission in a city, for example, next week there'll be a team of us in Manchester, there will be evangelical churches locally who will come and support us, and that's the most ideal situation, where you've got the Christians there, and if someone says, I'd really like to start going to church, do you know of a good church? You can say, well, John over here, he goes to such and such a church. He'd be delighted to speak to you and give you the details. And we try to have contact details of local churches so that we can direct people to. Yes.
Now, I also know, Andy, that you do a lot of work on the beach.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us about the beach mission.
Okay,
that sounds wonderful. Do you get free holidays?
Oh, it really grates on me when Christians say, oh, you're going on holiday to beach mission again. And I say, it's not a holiday. And in fact, when we have teams of young people who come to beach mission, and we have an introductory evening when we're just settling them in and telling them what to expect. And one of the first things I always say, now folks, if you think you've come on a holiday, you're in the wrong place. So we want them to know that it is fun, it is an opportunity to serve, and we're there, to reach out. And my first exposure to Christian outreach was an open-air mission, beach mission, as an 18-year-old in North Devon. And they really are a wonderful opportunity to, again, reach the unchurched. And it's so noticeable when you can have a group of children, 30 or 40 children, sitting in front of you, having a meeting on the beach, singing and games and quizzes. If we ask, do you know the name of the young man in the Bible who killed Goliath? You'll barely have a hand go up. And yet, for those of us who are from a Christian background, who've been saved early and we've known the Bible, to hear of so few knowing these great biblical characters and great biblical truths is sad on the one hand, but it's wonderful that we're free to have beach meetings, lots of fun and games, but the serious side of sharing the gospel. And some of the beach mission centres we have, such as Tenby in Pembrokeshire, some families actually and their children love the beach mission experience so much, they actually book their holiday year on year to coincide with when the team's going to be there. Because they become friends, and there's that ongoing contact, and relationships are built, and more of the gospel is shared with them.
Okay, so do you plan what beaches that you're going to visit? I mean, it's obviously not the same beaches every year, or is it?
Oh, it is, yes.
It is,
we can't just most beaches are sort of regulated by local councils. We can't just turn up and have a programme.
Oh, you can't?
No, we have to apply each year, get their permission, and they usually give us a set area, and then we're free for the duration of usually a fortnight to have meetings morning and afternoon for boys and girls, and then in the evening we try to have family events where we'd have lots of silly games for mums and dads, and then have donuts and drinks, and have a gospel epilogue, get one of the team to share their testimony of how they came to know the Lord, and if we're very brave we even have a little singing group as well. But it's just a relaxed environment to share the gospel with people. And I think of a lady in Sandown who stopped to listen. She was on the prom with her daughter, and her 2 grandchildren had come down to the meeting. They were on the last night of their holiday. They thought, we'll go down from the caravan park, we'll just have one last look at the sea, as you often like to do.